On kinematics in class today. So let me explain this question. Well, you had a baseball that is being tossed from street level by a student straight up at a speed of 25.3 meter per second. So this is the point from where the baseball is tossed up, and the initial velocity you see is 25.3 meters per second. Well, after reaching the maximum height, the baseball reaches the maximum height till here, and then again it falls back, and then it is caught by another student on the roof of a building. So there is another student here is standing on this roof of the building, and the building is 17.4 meters tall, and this guy standing here actually catches the ball. So the question they're asking is, how long does it take for this guy to catch the ball? So we need to break this question into two steps. First, we need to find what is the maximum height the ball attains, like this from this point till this point. So what is the height that the ball attains? So we know that as the ball goes up, as it reaches to the highest point, its velocity becomes zero. So we will use one of the kinematic equation to calculate the velocity. So what are the things we have? We have the initial velocity. If you look at the initial velocity is given to be, sorry, the initial velocity is given to be 25.3. So the initial velocity is 25.3, and then 25.3 meter per second. And then we have the final velocity, and the final velocity is given to be 0. So the final velocity is going to be 0 meters per second. So this is 0 meter per second. And then, so what we are going to do is we are going to use the formula, and acceleration is here. You see the acceleration is given to be negative 9.8. As now why it is negative, we discussed that in class. So the point is, the ball is going up and the gravity is acting downwards, so it has to be taken as negative. So we use the formula v squared equals to u squared plus twice as. So we are going to use the formula v squared equals to u squared plus twice as. And what we do is that we sub in the values. So here the final velocity is 0, so we will have 0 squared is equal to actually u squared, which is 25.3, which is 25.3 squared, added to sorry twice times negative 9.8 multiplied by s. Um, so we solve this, and we are going to get s equals to, when you solve this equation, you are going to get s equals to 32.65. So we'll get 32.65 meters. 32.65 meters. So technically we are going to say from this point till this point we have 32.65 meters. Now this point to this point already is 17.4 meters. So we need to calculate what is the distance between this point to this point. So the distance between this point to this point is going to be 32.65 minus 17.4. So let's try to do that part. So we'll try to find the distance. So that is going to be 35. So that is going to be 35.65 minus 17.4, and that gives you 15.25 meters. 15.25 meters. Now this is the distance we have calculated. So this distance comes out to be 15.25 meters. So here we have 15.25 meters. Now we also need to calculate the time it takes to move from this point to this point. So here again the initial velocity is 25.3 meter per second. The final velocity is 0. the acceleration is 9.8. So we could use the formula v equals to u plus at to actually calculate the time it takes to go from this particular point to this point. So let's use the formula and try to calculate the time it takes. So we have v equals to u plus at. So our equation is going to be v equals to u plus at, and the final velocity is going to be 0, and 0 is going to be equal to 25.3 added to, within bracket, this is negative 9.8 multiplied by time. And when you solve this equation, you are going to get t as equal to 2.58 seconds. So 2.58 seconds. Uh, let me call this as t1. Let me call this as t1. T1 is 2.58 seconds, and this is the time we have calculated, uh, the time taken by the ball to go from the lowermost point, the point from where it was actually tossed, to the highest point. Now again it takes another time to go from the highest point till this particular point. So we need to calculate this time as well, and once we calculate this time, we add this time to the time we calculated from this point to this point, and we are done. So let's try to calculate the time it takes to go from the highest point to this particular point, which is 15.25 meters. So if you see in this question, you have the initial velocity 0 now, because the ball was at rest and it started moving. So it started at rest. So here the initial velocity is 0. The acceleration is 9.8. The distance is 15.25. So the formula we can use now, is s equals to ut plus half at squared. S equals to ut plus half at squared plus half a t squared. And you know the distance is, we just calculated the distance to be 15.25 meters. So the distance is 15.25 meters. I would say 15.25 meters, and the initial velocity is 0, and 0 multiplied by time is going to be 0. 0 added to half multiplied by 9.8. Now in this case 9.8 is going to be positive because the ball is moving in the direction of the gravity, multiplied by t squared. So when we solve this equation, this implies when you solve this equation, you are going to get equals to t equals to 1.76 seconds. 1.76 seconds. And let me call this as, t2, and this is 1.76 seconds. Now the total time, if you see, the total time taken is actually t1 plus t2. So, and that was the question. The question was, how long does it take? So the total time taken, so I would write here total time. So total time is equal to t1 plus t2, and when you add these two numbers, you have 2.58, and 1.76. So when you add 2.58 and 1.76, you get 4.34 seconds. 4.34 seconds. And that's the answer, because the question was, how long does it take? So the time it takes is 4.34 seconds.